1. The arrow flew away. But what I heard wasn't the wail of a hare, but a muffled groan from a man. My scalp instantly went numb. This Dasong mountain is so deserted, how could there be a human voice? Following the sound, I saw a man leaning against a ginkgo tree, nearly unconscious. Could it be that the heavens saw how lonely I was in this mountain, and sent me my ideal husband? I got closer to observe him. This man had eyebrows like steep peaks, a nose as sharp as jade, and lips defined. He was so handsome that I couldn't look away. Even if I couldn't look away, I had to. Because my arrow was lodged in his thigh. Of course, that wasn't the worst of it. He had 2 more lodged in his chest. I swear to God, I didn't shoot those arrows. I can't afford such fine arrows. He was probably dead. I had better get away. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't obey me. He was truly handsome, even more handsome than the men I'd met on my way down the mountain. It would be a shame to see him die like this. Never mind, let's drag him back first. But I hadn't expected this man, though skinny, to be as strong as a wild deer. Back home, I rubbed my aching shoulders and looked at the man lying in bed, feeling a new dilemma. What if he survived and I had to take responsibility for him? If he were fine, it would be fine, but the placement of my arrows had probably damaged him. If such a handsome man could only be looked at but not eaten, it would be extremely boring. Never mind, let's save him first. In no time, I pulled out the 2 arrows from his chest, stopped the bleeding, applied medicine, and bandaged it. Though I consider myself a lustful person, my heart couldn't help but warm when my gaze shifted to his crotch. While there are differences between men and women, it's not necessary for doctors and the injured to be so particular. I pulled out a pair of scissors, the blades touching his flesh as I carefully cut through the fabric. I patted my chest. Thankfully, the arrow had lodged diagonally at the base of his leg, unharmed his virility. I exhaled, and the work of extracting the arrow, stopping the bleeding, and applying medicine resumed. I bandaged his leg with a strip of cloth, but the thing between his legs was getting in the way. Without thinking, I pinched it and moved it to the other side. The next moment, my eyes widened, and the heat in my heart climbed to my cheeks. That guy was actually about to raise his head. Ah! I patted my burning face and began to comfort myself. Not much different from a buck. I see them all the time. No need to be embarrassed. I glanced at the still unconscious man. His eyelashes fluttered violently with pain. For some unknown reason, I reached out and gently patted it. No need to thank me yet. Wait until your master wakes up. But it stood up completely. I was completely stunned. I frantically pulled the blanket over him. The unconscious man's eyelashes trembled even more violently. I'd carefully cared for him for 5 days, using up all my father's treasured ginseng, but he still showed no signs of waking. So these past few days, when I went hunting in the woods, I'd also dug pits. The pit was almost finished when he woke up. As I was feeding him medicine, he suddenly coughed lightly, his eyelashes fluttering slightly. I leaned closer and was suddenly met with a pair of dark jade eyes. The corners of his crimson eyes were slightly raised, shimmering with a watery light. The depths of his pupils held a chilling coldness, reminiscent of shattered ice on a moonlit lake. Looking into those eyes, I was speechless. It wasn't until I was pushed away that I came to my senses. Who are you? He pushed me away and stood up but stumbled back in pain from the injury. Even with his injury, he still had enough strength to push me, causing me to stumble. I straightened my messed up clothes, feeling annoyed and angry. Who else could I be? Of course I'm your savior. You were shot in the woods, and I was the one who found you. The wariness in his eyes faded a little, but his expression remained stern. Thank you very much, but I have important matters to attend to. I will repay you someday. He made a move to stand up. Leave? Repay you someday? That wouldn't work. I was about to speak up to stop him, but then thought better of it and shut my mouth. I watched him drag his wounded body out of bed, and as he stood up, his legs gave way and he fell to the ground. When he touched the cold ground, he suddenly realized his lower body was completely naked. He quickly pulled the blanket draped over the bed to cover himself, his ears red as blood. "Where's my underwear?" "I cut it off to treat your injuries," I replied frankly. "You?" He sounded a little annoyed. The pain in his legs must have convinced him I wasn't lying, so he remained silent, his face reddening from ear to neck. "Don't sit there anymore. The floor's cold and it'll freeze you." I kindly tried to help him, but he turned away. "I'll do it myself." "Okay, whatever." I crossed my arms and watched coldly. He writhed in the blanket like a writhing fish. As soon as his upper body rested on the edge of the bed, beads of sweat formed on his forehead from the pain. Unable to bear it any longer, I walked over, lifted his calf, and he lay flat on his back. "There's no need to be so shy about me. I changed your medicine several times while you were unconscious. I've already checked everything. Your little brother even said hello to me. More than once." The man who had returned to his bed was much more obedient. He was wrapped up tightly, his eyes darting around. "Where is this?" "This is my home. Don't worry, it's well hidden. Your enemies can't find you. Just rest and recover." "Sometimes I don't understand Dad. Why does he insist on living so deep in the mountains? The market down there is so bustling. There aren't even any young men in these mountains. It's so boring. But now there is one." I looked at the silkworm chrysalis on the bed, wanting to ask him something but not knowing how to address him, so I asked him. "What's your name?" "Huang Wu." That got me excited. Wu is in dancing. Judging by your figure, you must know something. Sword dance? Huteng dance? The Wu in Wugong, the kind that kills people. Okay, it's a little less interesting. But it's not bad either, it sounds quite exciting. Why are your enemies hunting you? Looking at his appearance, I'm afraid he's in debt to some romantic relationship. Maybe they think I'm stealing his business. His eyes darkened for a moment, then cleared again, his gaze settling on my face. "I don't know what your name is, young lady." "My name is Chu Yinxing." 3. My father's name is Chu Song. He found me under a ginkgo tree that year. So he named me Chu Yinxing. My father and I lived in the vast, hundreds-mile-long Dasong Mountains, hunting for a living. But just 6 months ago, my father said he had to go down the mountain for something, which would take at most 6 months, at most a year, and asked me to wait here for him. I was bored alone in the mountains, so I started thinking about finding a companion. Originally, my ideal husband was Nioer, who worked at the butcher shop at the foot of the mountain. He's broad-shouldered, thick-chested, and muscular, probably enough to carry a wild boar. More importantly, he always smiles brightly when he sees me, and he offers the highest price for my prey. He constantly asks me to marry him. Actually, Bai Shuzheng from the bookstore down the mountain isn't bad either. He's fair-skinned, and has a wonderful temper. But now I'm wavering. Nioer may be quite strong, but his face is rather rough, and he's prone to dirty talk. Bai Shuzheng may be delicate, but he's also quite delicate, and he loves giving away useless items like hairpins, and he even enjoys reciting sour poems. This man before me is not only handsome, but he also looks quite strong. Although his origins are unknown, so am I. Dad only said I found him under a ginkgo tree. I found him under a ginkgo tree, too. How can this not be fate? Okay, that's it. I'd figured it out, but he was leaving. After a few days of recuperation, he could sit up, but getting out of bed was still a struggle, yet he insisted on leaving. Didn't we agree to stay here and recuperate peacefully? He really doesn't recognize me once he's put on his pants. But speaking of clothes, even though he'd shed his silk gown and donned my father's coarse cloth, he still looked regal. Seeing him like this every day would make my hunting more exciting. So I began to earnestly persuade him to stay. Have you thought it through? With all these injuries on your body, if your enemies caught you, you'd be in grave danger. He leaned against the headboard and nodded slightly at me. I really have something urgent to do. I curled my lips in disdain. What's so important about business? There are so many ways to make money. 2 years ago, my father dug up a century-old ginseng plant. He said it was worth dozens of taels of silver. I tried to persuade him to sell it, but he refused. This was a good deal for Huang Wu. I silently added this to his tally and continued my persuasion. If you die, your business will naturally fail. Wait until you're well again, then it's not too late to go. He must have been persuaded. After a moment's hesitation, he bowed and said, I'll be bothering you for the time being. His blazing gaze fell on me. I'll definitely reward you handsomely someday. The candlelight flickered, but his eyes remained unblinking. I felt uncomfortable being stared at, so I scratched my neck and said, I'll make you something to eat. Since he'd agreed to stay, I had to make sure he had some good food. But my cooking skills are limited. It was only after my father disappeared that I began trying to make something filling. An hour later, I brought a bowl of soup to his bedside. He took it and took a sip. How's it going? I looked at him expectantly. He lowered his head and took another spoonful. Not bad. What's that soup? I blinked. Deer penis soup. Ahem. He coughed violently. I reached out to pat him, but he stopped me. His face flushed with coughing, his eyes cold and puzzled. Why are you giving me this? Why else? To make amends, of course, even though he didn't know I'd shot that arrow. What you eat nourishes you. His confusion shifted to shock, and finally to speechlessness. You're a girl, and you're so rude. I wasn't to be outdone. You're rude, I'm rude. I think we're a perfect match. His jaw tightened, and he turned his head away from me, revealing a slightly bulging vein on his neck. Not to mention, he's a bit charming. But he's got a mouth. I said coldly, you're talking nonsense. My temper flared up, and I snatched the bowl from his hand, set it on the table, and reached out to poke him in the heart. Is this how you treat your savior? You were hit by 3 arrows. If I hadn't stumbled upon you, you'd be dead by now. He groaned in pain from my poke, his expression remaining stern. I fainted after being hit by your arrow. He actually knew. So what? I saved his life after all. That doesn't make much difference. My arrow was just a flesh wound, not fatal. He suddenly raised his eyes and said with a forced smile, you almost crippled me. Just talk. Why are you staring at me? And that sinister smile is so unsettling. I picked up the soup and stuffed it back into his hands. Stop talking nonsense. Drink it quickly. I won't be responsible if you stare to death. 4. I used to complain to Dad, can't we really live down the mountain? We have enough money to buy a small house. Dad said the mountains have their advantages, but I don't understand. Now I finally have a taste for life. In this vast mountain, there are only the 2 of us, free to gather whatever insects, fish, birds, and animals I please. It's such a joy. It would be even better if Dad were back. Huang Wu's health has improved considerably, and he can now get out of bed and do simple activities. He took the cooking responsibilities, saying he was afraid I'd torture him with strange ingredients again. Although I was indignant, I couldn't argue. 5 days ago, after eating the mushroom soup I made, we both fell asleep in the yard. To be precise, he slept on the ground, and I slept in his arms. This meant he lay there for another 5 days before he could stand up again. Although he only cooks simple meals, I'm not picky. Returning home from hunting in the evening, the sight of the smoke rising from the kitchen made my steps spring to life. Huang Wu waited for me at the gate, unbowed my bow, and then brushed the fallen leaves off my shoulders. Looking at the young woman's expression, I couldn't help but ask again. I think you should stay here in the mountains with me. Wouldn't we be happy as a wild couple? He still refused, using the same excuse. I have something important to do. I grabbed his collar. Are you married? He pried my fingers apart one by one and wiped the dust off them. No. Then he simply looked down on me. I ignored him out of spite, and only ate 3 bowls of rice. The next day, my anger had subsided considerably, because I realized there were downsides to living with someone else. Money goes quickly. For his injury, I ate good food, drank good medicine, and took care of everything, but my wallet was getting thinner and thinner. It forced me to go hunting every morning after breakfast. So, I decided not to keep him. I should let him go once he recovered. In the evening, I was walking back with my hunted rabbit when I saw a deer leap by. I thought for a moment and chased after it. I chased the deer farther and farther, and before I knew it, I was a bit lost. Dad never let me go too deep into the woods, saying there were tigers. But this was a buck, and Huang Wu would be useful. Thinking of Huang Wu, my anger rose again. I probably wouldn't be able to use it, so why bother trying so hard to feed him? I gave up chasing him. Thinking it through, I simply turned around and headed back. You're so ungrateful. Let's go. We'd better leave tomorrow. I kept walking, cursing, when suddenly my footing gave way and I fell. Sitting up, clutching my sore butt, I realized what was happening. I'd fallen into the trap Dad had dug. It was all Huang Wu's fault. He'd made me lose my mind. Luckily, Dad had warned me that the trap was too far away, and there were tigers nearby, so he'd dismantled all the mechanisms. Otherwise, I'd be dead. The sky darkened and a light rain began to fall. The trap's walls were slippery, leaving nowhere to hold onto. I twisted my ankle as I fell, and my bow and arrow were thrown flying. Climbing out was incredibly difficult. After countless attempts, I collapsed at the damp bottom of the trap, desperately wanting only to cry out to the heavens. I don't know how long it took, but in a daze, I heard the rustling of dry leaves. I suddenly opened my eyes and searched for the cave entrance. A huge black shadow loomed in the outline of the cave entrance, and 2 faint green pinpricks of light flickered above. A tiger. It had clearly spotted me, and my arrow was nowhere to be found. My heart sank to the bottom, and despair surged over me like a tide. My whole body trembled. Dad wouldn't be able to find me when he returned. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to eat Huang Wu's cooking again. It crouched low, its saliva dripping like beads, its shoulder muscles bulging beneath its fur as it poised to pounce. I screamed. With a sudden piercing sound, an arrow grazed the top of the cave entrance, piercing the tiger's right eye with pinpoint accuracy. Thick drops of blood dripped down the shaft. It flung its head wildly, its hind legs kicking up a haze of dead leaves, and dashed off into the depths of the forest, dragging the arrow with it. I trembled as I touched the blood spatter on my face. My throat tightened, unable to speak. I could only tilt my head back and breathe deeply. The rain had stopped and the sky cleared. Huang Wu's face appeared alongside the moon. The hazy moonlight dimly illuminated the worry in his eyes. I finally found you, Ginkgo. My tears flowed like the tiger's saliva. Huang Wu's back was as broad as I'd imagined. I lay on his back, gazing at the swaying, mottled shadows of the trees, feeling drowsy. He turned his head slightly. You've been in these mountains all year, how could you have strayed into a tiger's territory? I was chasing a deer and got lost. It was just a deer, not worth much. It was a buck. He paused and lifted me, who was trying to slide down. I told you I didn't need this, but you just wouldn't believe me. How about you try it? I was drowsy. Try what? He chuckled softly, his hot breath puffing against my nose. What do you think? I pondered his words for a moment, and my sleepiness immediately vanished. Then I quietly straightened up, leaning against his shoulder, afraid he'd notice my pounding heartbeat. My feet hurt. Let's go home. It wasn't that I was scared, it was that my feet really hurt. Well, that's what happened. His smile deepened. Okay, let's go home. My pace suddenly quickened and I, caught off guard, leaned back slightly, instinctively clinging to his neck. Hold tight if you don't want to fall. The scorching heat seeped through my wet clothes and into my cold skin, ironing my grip even tighter. The tips of his ears were red from my pinching, and his neck felt even hotter. Huang Wu's wounds had become red and swollen again from the rain, and he was also running a fever. My condition wasn't much better, either, so I could only hop around on one foot. I looked at Huang Wu and said, "Why don't we sleep together tonight? We can take care of each other at night." I swear this was a genuine invitation, because jumping back and forth between the two rooms was exhausting. I knew he was still sticking with the old rules about sex. I had already prepared an excuse. We were just sharing a bed, each with our own blankets, sleeping in our clothes. What's the big deal? What if you got delirious with the fever in the middle of the night? Unexpectedly, he agreed so readily. Okay. I was still debating whether to jump over and grab my blanket, when he lifted a corner and slid in a little. Seeing I didn't move, he patted the bed. After lying down, I regretted it deeply, because I couldn't sleep at all. He was as warm as a stove, which was indeed comfortable, but his heartbeat was so strong that it made my heart tremble. On my sixth toss and turn, he finally couldn't help it and reached out to hold me. Go to sleep. Now I couldn't sleep even more. I tilted my head, and in the flickering candlelight, his silhouette was dimly visible on the wall. I traced your story several times with my eyes and asked him, "Is your business really that important?" He hummed softly, "Very important. I have to do it. I have to do it." Then let's go. 6. I saved Huang Wu's life, and he saved mine too. It's even. I can no longer use my life-saving grace to morally blackmail him into staying with me. I'll have to go down the mountain and find another suitable husband. I loaded the prey onto the cart and waved to Huang Wu. I'm going down the mountain. Be good at home. I'll bring you sesame cakes when I come back. He leaned against the door, like a young wife seeing her husband off to war. I'll go with you. The shunned martial arts school down the mountain is recruiting students, with classes every 5 days, which happens to be the time I go down the mountain to sell my wares. There are many good men there, all of them strong and sturdy. Even if I take a step back, learning some self-defense techniques is always a good idea. Taking him with me would be a bit inconvenient. No, this is easy for me. I waved to Huang Wu again. My hand was stopped mid-air, and his hand covered my wrist. The fabric slipped down my forearm, and the warmth of his palm burned directly onto my wrist. Hot, so hot. I pulled my hand away angrily, continuing to threaten him. What if your enemies come looking for you? His eyes were dark. I can disguise myself. I became interested too. I took a pair of scissors and cut a strand of deer tail, and handed it to him. Here, go get a beard. I leaned leisurely against the cart, waiting to see him make a fool of himself. But when he came out, I didn't laugh. Because I was mesmerized by his beauty again. Even in middle age, with a beard, he would still be incredibly handsome. It's a pity I couldn't see him. After descending the mountain, we first went to Nioer's butcher shop. He continued his lewd remarks. Little Ginkgo, your waist is getting thinner. I told you to marry me soon, so I could give you a good workout. Then his gaze fell on Huang Wu. Why, you found a gigolo. Why not someone younger? Huang Wu glanced sideways at Nioer, a chill in his eyes. Their eyes met, a tense atmosphere building. I quickly smoothed things over. As I led Huang Wu out, I smiled back at Nioer. If someone older is willing to come over. Huang Wu's face darkened completely, and he ripped off his fake beard as he left the house. When I returned to the bookstore, Bai Shuzheng came up to me and said, "Have you finished reading? I found a few more interesting ones for you to take home." Bai Shuzhen was too obtuse to notice the scowling Huang Wu beside me. He was completely absorbed in his conversation. Ginkgo, why did you take so long to come this time? I missed you so much. I just wrote a poem for you. I'll recite it to you. He had barely gotten ready when Huang Wu grabbed my sleeve and dragged me away. If you don't leave now, it'll be dark. It wasn't even noon yet. When we arrived at the shunned martial arts hall, a group of shirtless, muscular men were practicing boxing in the courtyard. It was dazzling. Great. I immediately called the owner and said I wanted to enroll. Our annual tuition is 5 taels of silver. Please deposit it with me. Wait, 5 taels. I felt my purse. 10 days after my injured foot stopped me from hunting, it was getting even thinner. I looked at the owner sheepishly. Can I only learn for 6 months? Excuse me, we don't want to. Huang Wu, with a cold face, grabbed my wrist and dragged me away, looking back every few steps. When we reached the street, I shook his hand off. We made a good price today. Why are you so sullen? Oh, I see. I didn't give him any. I grabbed his hand again and placed a few copper coins in it. Here, this is for you. Go buy something. We'll meet at the pancake stand later. He did indeed buy a bulging bag. When I asked him what it was, he wouldn't say. He was free to say. But he'd spent all the money, and still had a cold face. I guess he was thinking about leaving again. Let's go, let's go. I can't keep you here anyway. 7. On the way back, Huang Wu walked ahead, pushing the cart head first. It was quite a struggle for me to catch up with him, even with my bare hands and feet. When we got home, he abandoned the cart and stood alone in the yard. His voice was cold, yet hinted at the anger of a roasted chestnut. So you have so many lovers down here in the mountains? Me? Then why did you ask me to stay with you? I wanted to make a joke, but Huang Wu turned around, his brow furrowed, and his eyes reddened. The words faltered on my lips. I could only mutter, I don't have any lovers. He stepped forward, standing a meter's length away from me, and looked down at me. You want to learn martial arts? Why don't you let me teach you, instead of going after those shirtless, rough guys? I couldn't just say I wanted to go and see if there were any better ones than him. Seeing me stammer for a long time, he took another step forward, his breath puffing on my head. I spoke in anger and haste. That fat guy at the butcher shop down the mountain, why did he say your waist has gotten thinner? Did he hug you? I quickly denied, of course not. As I finished speaking, he had already pulled me into his arms, one arm around my waist, the other stroking my back. His thin lips pressed against my ear, his voice tinged with grievance. Didn't you say you'd take responsibility for me after seeing me naked? Why are you denying it? You saw me, slept with me, and now you're looking for someone else. I admitted I had seen him, but when did I sleep with him? When did I sleep with you? A few days ago we slept together. How could that be the same? Wait, hadn't he been rejecting me all along? I nudged him gently, and he looked up, his hands still tightly on me. Our eyes met, and the red in his eyes made my heart clench. My words were less confident. You didn't want to stay. I tried to persuade you, but you insisted on leaving. What can I do? He lowered his head to rest his forehead against mine. I do have something important to do. When I'm done, I'll come back for you. Can you wait for me and not look for anyone else? Unlike at first, the coldness in his eyes melted, transforming into a pool of spring water. It was easy to get lost in it. If it takes too long, I won't wait. Just wait for me for 3 months. I'll only wait for 3 months. A warm kiss landed on my forehead. Okay. 8. After dinner, Huang Wu pressed me into a chair, his eyes grave. Ginkgo, wait a moment. He retrieved the bundle and undid the knot slowly, almost with a solemnity that bordered on reverence. The bundle unfolded on the table, and red silk poured out. My breath hitched. Beneath the red silk, 2 dragon and phoenix wedding candles lay side by side. Next to the candle was a neatly folded red veil. A dazzling red filled the air, so abrupt in this winter day, so breathtaking. Ginkgo. He slowly squatted, kneeling on one knee before my lap. His voice was low but remarkably clear. I am attracted to you. Will you be my wife? My heart felt like it was soaked in plum wine, sour and intoxicating. Is this all you bought today? He took my hand and gently kissed it. I know this is too hasty, but I'm afraid you won't wait for me. Ginkgo, I've already fallen in love with you. Be my only wife for this life, okay? A tingling sensation spread from my palm to my heart, and I nodded dazedly. Red silk hung high, a red candle nestled close. Rouge fluttered against my face, the veil lightly covering my face. He filled the wedding wine cup. Ginkgo, today we take this Mount Song as witness to our marriage, forever and ever inseparable. His dark jade eyes, tinged with intoxication, shimmered with water, reflecting my rouge-stained lips. The white knot in my hair was ripped free, leaving my long black hair scattered across my shoulders, which he gently gathered. He put one arm around my waist, the other around my knees, gently lifting me up, the warmth of his palm searing. His scent lingered on my nose, and my cheeks felt hot. I instinctively tightened my grip around his shirt. The bathroom was filled with steam and mist. The clothes slowly slipped off. The warm water enveloped us. I leaned in his arms, counting his staccato heartbeats. The light touch of my fingertips caused him to shudder. He grasped my hand, which was restless on his chest, and drew me down to his body. The heat beneath me was even hotter than the lukewarm water, making me flinch uncontrollably. A smile played on his lips and he took my hand and pressed it back. Madam, why are you shy? Aren't you familiar with it? The alluring voice in my ear made my fingertips curl slightly. The subtle scrape of his hand elicited a soft moan from his throat, and his breathing became ragged. I blinked and looked at him, and he scooped me up, his eyes filled with lust fixed on me. Soft lips pressed down, and our breaths mingled, until I couldn't bear it any more and turned my head away. He then bit my earlobe, and a teasing voice echoed in my ear. Madam, rude is a word and should be used together, right? I wanted to retort, but the words I spoke were shattered by the impact. Before the water turned cold, he pulled me out, wrapped me in his robe, and carried me to the bed. The slightly cool body pressed down on me. I should behave myself today, and not let my wife's soup go to waste. I didn't fall into a deep sleep until daybreak. In a hazy daze, the warm, moist cloth moved across my body. Refreshed, I slept until dawn. Huangwu was right, he truly didn't need that thing. I clutched my aching waist, secretly thankful I hadn't chased that buck that night. As I pondered, the aroma of food wafted over and my stomach growled at the perfect time. I pushed open the door and saw Huangwu standing in the courtyard. My lips curled up but a faint unease lingered within me. Ginkgo, his voice was hoarse. My hand, holding the chopsticks, faltered in the air. But are you leaving? He nodded, his eyes red, yet his gaze was gentle and passionate. My dear, when I return, I'll give you a grand wedding. I picked up a piece of meat and placed it in his bowl. Okay, I'll wait. 9. The snow fell again and again. The branches began to sprout, and I was bored in the yard, sorting fox furs. My father hadn't returned, and neither had Huangwu. 3 whole months had passed, and there was no news of Huangwu. Could he be a fugitive imprisoned? A few days later, I came down the mountain and saw a notice, only to learn of the dramatic changes in the world. The previous emperor had passed away, and the new emperor had ascended the throne, granting amnesty. Well, even that excuse didn't work for him. He must have remarried and forgotten me. I wandered aimlessly down the mountain, returning home just as dusk fell. As I approached, I noticed smoke rising from the courtyard again. My heart suddenly sank, then began beating like a drum, nearly shattering my chest. I stumbled to the courtyard gate, which was flung open. A figure stood in the center of the courtyard. The moonlight shone sparingly, only outlining the broad lines of his shoulders. At the sound, the figure slowly turned, his brocade robe billowing in the breeze. My wife. His voice was hoarse. My heart skipped a beat. I clutched the rough doorframe tightly, fighting back the heat in my eyes. You're 5 days late. I don't want to be your wife anymore. He strode forward, pulling my trembling body into his arms. I'm sorry I'm late. Ginkgo, I missed you so much. Warm tears streamed down my neck, and I couldn't tell whose they were. That night, the longing after a long absence transformed into a powerful rush. I tilted my head back, the wedding sign on the window catching my eye, just as bright red as it had been 3 months ago. The next day, I woke up to Huang Wu's smiling face. Wife, wake up. My whole body ached as if it had been run over by a car. I pinched his waist angrily, which only made him smile even brighter. He held me in his arms, his fingers twirling my hair. Wife, let's move somewhere else, okay? Where? You'll know when we get there. I still had some concerns, but I promised Dad I'd wait here for him. I looked up at him, and his kiss landed on my forehead. I'll have someone waiting here. We'll come as soon as we get any news, okay? Okay then. Outside the palace gates. I couldn't help but be shocked. Your business has even reached the palace. No wonder your enemies are jealous. He couldn't hide the smile in his eyes. Yes, my lady, my business is the largest in the world. What's there to be proud of? Someday I find 1,000-year-old ginseng, and I'll sell it to this palace. His smile widened. Okay, I'll collect it then. As we got closer to the palace gate, I couldn't help but feel nervous. They say the palace has so many strict rules, and it's easy to get beheaded if you act carelessly. I quietly grabbed Huang Wu's sleeve, and he led me back. Don't be afraid. When we reached the palace gate, a guard stepped forward. The moment they saw his face clearly, a sea of people knelt down. Your Majesty. The chorus of shouts filled my ears with a ringing sound, and I almost fell to my knees along with them. Your Majesty. Are you the Emperor? Yes, but I'm your husband first. But doesn't this world belong to the Li family? My real name is Li Yunqian. Li Yunqian. The 5th prince appointed crown prince by the late Emperor Li Yunqian. What a Huang Wu. 10. Inside the imperial study. He poked my puffy cheek. My lady, I was wrong. You're the Emperor. How can an emperor be wrong? I took a step back, but he grabbed me, and I lost my balance and fell into his lap. He hugged me from behind, burying his face in the back of my neck. I'm wrong because I made you angry. I huffed. Then you'd better explain yourself. He turned me around, hugged me to his chest, and rested his chin on the top of my head. The emperor is old, and my 4th brother intends to seize the throne. His first step is to eliminate me, the crown prince. At the time, I was on a long inspection tour of Zhangzhou under the emperor's orders. I encountered my 4th brother halfway. I was being pursued, outnumbered, and after being shot, I fled to Dasong Mountain. It turned out that the 2 arrows that nearly took his life came from his blood-related brother. A wave of heartache welled up in my heart, and my body swayed slightly uncontrollably. He noticed immediately and held me steady in his arms. Thank goodness I met you, my lady. Now I want to thank 4th brother. I reached out to cover his mouth, hushing him, but he grabbed me. At the time, I was only thinking about returning to the palace as quickly as possible. Your words woke me up. If I had appeared rashly, I would have been in grave danger. I wanted him to think I was dead, that the throne was already within his grasp, with no more obstacles. Let his taut bowstring relax. Then, his voice suddenly deepened. Kill him with one blow. He lowered his head, his gaze fixed on my face. My lady, I didn't mean to hide this from you. It's just that this struggle for imperial power, with its flashing swords and fratricide, is fraught with blood. I was afraid of getting you involved. I was afraid I couldn't protect you. The matter he was talking about was so serious, a matter of life and death, a matter of state. How could I blame him? I buried my face in his chest. Desongshan is our home, and it will be our home from now on. He gently stroked my head. I've sent people to look for my father. I'm sure there will be news soon. I was just basking in this long-lost embrace when a message suddenly came from outside the palace. General Song requested an audience. A burly general, clad in armor, entered the hall and knelt to report, "Your Majesty, the remnants of Yunsi have been completely wiped out." Just that figure, that voice, felt familiar. I stepped closer. "Dad?" Seeing the general's face clearly, I couldn't help but blurt out, "Isn't this my rough-hewn dad? When did he become a general?" "Ginkgo." I doubt Dad would have guessed his country girl had ever entered the palace. "Dad? I don't deserve it." "Stop, stop." I called out to the two men, huddled together. I looked at Dad. "Before anything else, why are you General Song?" Dad lowered his head and whispered, "Because my real name is Song Chu, and I'm the leader of the late Emperor's secret army. The late Emperor issued a decree ordering us to remain anonymous, but if there were any rebellion, he would summon the entire army to support the Crown Prince's ascension to the throne." Dad held out his palm, a tiger talisman resting quietly in it. "What a Chu Song. Okay, you all have real names. What about me? Do I have some special identity, too?" I looked at my father. Perhaps I, too, had a hidden identity. "No, you're just the hunter's daughter." "Well, I'm unworthy. Let's talk about state affairs." 11. 2 months later, Yunshun threw me a grand wedding. The palace was festooned with lights and streamers, and the land and mountains celebrated. I was crowned empress. 6 months later, I became pregnant with twins. But the birth was difficult. Deep in the warm room, pain threatened to tear me apart. My inner garments were soaked with cold sweat, my wet hair clung to my cheeks and neck. I was practically drained of strength. In the midst of the chaos, my hand was grasped with such force that it seemed as if it were trying to recharge my fading strength. "Your Majesty, the dragon's health is paramount. The maternity ward is filled with blood and arrogance, unsuitable for a lord of your Majesty." A panicked voice trembled from behind the screen. "Shut up." His burning palms trembled violently with rage. "If anything happens to the Empress, I will have the entire Imperial Hospital buried with her." Every word was like an icicle, laced with the murderous aura of an emperor. He immediately leaned over me, his other hand trembling slightly as he gently wiped the cold sweat from my forehead. "Ginkgo," he whispered, his voice hoarse and almost inaudible. "Don't be afraid, I'm here." The candlelight crackled softly, and I stared at his silhouette in the light. A surge of scorching heat suddenly rushed to my heart. 2 faint cries were heard, and the midwife wept with joy. "Congratulations, Your Majesty, on the birth of a little prince and princess." His tense body suddenly relaxed. His hot lips, trembling with the weight of life, pressed deeply against my sweat-soaked, cold forehead. "Ginkgo, I'm terrified. I'll never have another child again." Within a year, a new wave of turmoil stirred in the former dynasty. Memorials poured in like snowflakes, each one emphasizing, "The foundation of the state lies in the prosperity of the imperial heir, and the harem is empty. It is advisable to recruit more virtuous women to expand the imperial family." He defied all opposition in the court. "In this life, I will only have one wife, the Empress. Giving birth to these 2 children for me has cost the Empress all her life, and she even faced the gates of death. These 2 princes are enough for me in this life. I will teach my princes with all my heart. If they prove capable, all this vast land will be theirs. If not," he hummed softly, "I will choose a truly virtuous ruler for this world." I was playing with my babbling children when the news reached me. Just as he was returning from court, I held out my arms to him, and he took off running. The bright yellow brocade danced in the morning breeze. The majestic and imposing ruler still looked like a teenager to me. I took off running, too, and threw myself into his arms. He held me tightly. "My lady, you look so young, it truly stirs my passion. You could easily capture me at any time." His lips pressed down, and after a kiss, he was reluctant to part. "From the moment you shot me, I've been destined to be your prey for the rest of my life." I chuckled softly. "Good boy." He staked the eternal laws of imperial succession, along with the weight of his kingdom, on the word love. "This palace is like the sea, where my ups and downs are beyond my control. But with this ray of his warmth, I have no fear in the dark years to come."